Hello, Guardians. Today I want to talk about something regarding endgame of Destiny, mainly something that I really enjoy, and I think a lot of you enjoy as well, and that is Grandmaster Nightfalls. To me, this season, there is a big problem that is starting to emerge with Grandmasters in general. And in short, I know we've all heard this a lot, but power creep on aging content is starting to become a huge issue, especially felt this season if you ran GMs. If you have any experience running them way back from season 10, me personally, I don't know what that felt like. I was not playing the game at the time. I didn't come back till season 14. But from my fond memory, season 14 had more of that slog to it. Rewards not being so great, turning Destiny into like a super big long range cover shooter where most red bars would take multiple hits, bosses were super tanky, champions were introduced, things that we all had to learn how to deal with. I'd love to hear your any experience of people that played back in season 10 and what that was like, as like I said, I was not playing the game at the time. um, this mode was known for one-shot attacks, hyper-aggressive enemies, increased burn and tick and environmental damage, and all with that lingering threat of the extinguish modifier being on, sending you back to orbit and losing 45 minutes of time just to start over. A lot of people said early on that this was super unfun. You weren't learning anything. Rewards sucked. Um, and when I came into the GM sphere and experienced it for the first time, that was back in season of the Splicer. When I came back, after taking a big long time after Beyond Light, because I just was not enjoying the game, and the first GM that I got into was Glassway, not knowing what to expect. Like I knew it was going to be hard, but needless to say, we did not finish a run that week. I think we did about 20 to 26 runs, maybe attempts. And man, I was not ready for it. I definitely was not geared for it. My weapons were not ready for it. My skill was not there. And to me, the part of the learning experience of how to do them is I think GMs have the biggest potential in the game to teach you the most about what you can do as a guardian in terms of using your abilities, using your kits, whether you main a titan, a warlock, or hunter. Me personally, I play hunter quite a bit. Um, that first season, I went 20 clears for 107 that season, and ended up almost gilding. But in the course of time, one of the reasons why I think GMs are such a good activity is it really teaches you, besides being one of the only things outside of day one raids that actually give us a true contest modifier, which those day one raids only come every so often, once, sometimes not even once a year. And GMs, we have, every 3 months we get that refresh of something, that can truly be difficult and truly test our skills. But, to me, this content really teaches you positioning, how to use everything in your arsenal to the fullest extent, communicate with your team, work as a team to take down these bosses, these enemies, these champions. Coming into Witch Queen in season of the Risen, I was looking really forward to doing these activities, and we got a lot of people in my clan who had never done them before. We were doing multiple runs a night with different people, getting their clears, helping multiple people get Conqueror. Some people, like I said, their first time, and man, they absolutely loved it in Witch Queen. And Witch Queen, I don't know if this issue was really prevalent, but the issue of power creep kind of started to show its face in Witch Queen. Up to that point, we had some bosses in GMs that had some attacks. We had some pretty insane environmental damage that would one-shot you. The So, for example, the boop attack on Sadia would send you absolutely into orbit. The champions getting moved in corrupted, things like that. We had, they did a lot of things going into Witch Queen to try to help with some of the issues of people getting platinums and clears. And in that season, a lot of people were surprised when we got Environmental Singe added to them, where we took 50% extra damage and we dealt, believe we dealt a percentage of extra damage. I can't remember what it is at this time, but we ended up causing more damage to enemies. And in terms of the GMs in Witch Queen, we had two of the absolute most insane ones, and probably something that I thought was really good for the game in Light Blade and Birthplace is injecting some newness into that, besides with Void 3.0. And last season felt good. Weapon meta felt good. The champions felt easier to deal with. Felt like some of the stuff was working now outside of Overload being its typical buggy self. But we had new stuff to do. We had new subclasses to play with, and Void was amazing. But like Omnioculus Hunter became my favorite class to run, and ended up being able to learn how to play super aggressive, really use my abilities, take advantage of all the weapons I have to clear, probably one of the hardest boss rooms we've had. I can't really say the strike was as bad, once you learned some strategies for it and ran it a few times, but the boss room was very difficult, and still, even if it comes back in the game, Elakul had some pretty crazy AI, and his arc attack was absolutely ridiculous. It took a bunch of creators some time to run it and learn strats to kind of learn how to manipulate spawns to get into your favor. But that level of combat, that level of movement, and things like that made that feel fresh. And the one strike that comes to mind that challenged us like that was the Hollowed Lair, which is unfortunately in the content vault at this point. I thought that boss room, knowing the strategy for the boss room, you couldn't just melt the bosses. You had to pick the boss down. You had to position yourself. You had to split your team up. You had to do different things. You had to help each other, communicate, move around the room, deal with different phases. And one of the true, I running Hallowed Lair on a GM is definitely made me see a strike that I hated and would skip, made me run it every time I got it, because I actually ended up really loving the boss room because of the Grandmaster, because I actually could appreciate the design and what you were supposed to be doing in it. But fast forward to the real topic of this video, my issue and my problems I can see emerging with Grandmasters and going forward, especially, it's like I said, in season 17, if you ran some Grandmasters after running them with some experience, you could easily say, I've heard people say it was the easiest we've ever had. It was boring. It was not fun. And after a certain time, personally, my fire team, we being experienced in GMs, we went in with solar, we threw on classy restoration, we ran meta stuff, and it took us 3 hours with no wipes, and I don't think we had any issue with any one of the strikes in the game. Which leads me to talking about power creep and aging content. Right around the corner, we have Arc 3.0, and we have Lightfall with the inevitable, which has already been kind of possibly leaked, a possible another subclass. All this, with Void, with Solar, with Arc, and Stasis, all being in the 3.0 system, with another one on the horizon. All this contributes, besides weapons, into the extreme power creep that we have. That this season was the most accessible version of Grandmaster Nightfalls we've ever had, due to the fact that our artifact mods, the sheer power level, the rapid cooldowns of our abilities, the sheer amount of level and slaying power that our guardians have at this point, plus the change to resilience actually mattering, getting a 40% damage reduction at all times. It's like pre protective light at all times, running 100 resilience. Add classy restoration to that, add to the extreme cooldowns, add to all the abilities that we have, the elemental burn, and none of that is a good recipe for, you know, what I feel is we are so strong that that we have the content in front of us cannot keep up with our power level. Um, Looking at the GMs that we had this season, most of them, a lot of them are from Red War, some of them from Forsaken, and it was a very Destiny 2 was a extremely different game back in the Red War, and these strikes cannot keep up with even on a contest modifier where we're 15 under power level. The game and the content cannot keep up with how much power that we have. Tying on to like one of the spiciest artifact mods we've ever had. Towards the end of the season, I think outside of my first runs, the 6 that I did initially, I don't think I've ran Solar outside of maybe Warden a couple times just to switch it up. But I went back to Void, and with 100 resilience on the Oculus and a very good ability to play that play style, the taking people through and helping my clanmates play through this content. Besides the fact that arguably 4 out of the 6 bosses can be killed before they spawn, or as they spawn, or immediately when they spawn. And the only 2 boss rooms you really have to fight in are Proving Grounds and Insight Terminus, and arguably Kargan can be stun locked due to power creep now as well. So my issue with is Bungie, if we're not going to, if we're going to keep getting strong, and we're inevitably going to keep getting stronger, all this stuff is going to stay very spicy. And Bungie even said that they want things to feel good to use. They want us to feel strong. But arguably, it's part of the endgame is that something like Grandmaster Nightfall, something that was specifically made for players to test themselves and to learn, has been trivialized by power creep to the point where a lot of people in my clan said it wasn't worth it this season. It wasn't worth it to run. That the rewards were not good enough. Granted, having 2 returning weapons and everything else being pretty much the same. We had Cabal in 5 out of the 6 GMs, anti-barrier, on-stop, and mostly everything. We were using Arbalest, Storm Chaser, switch out your scout rifle to match the burn. Just everything felt kind of samey. I hope in the future that I feel like this activity is one of the better activities in the game and could definitely improve. But the levels of power creep and the levels of just the fact that these strikes can't keep up with us anymore shows that we need some either stuff to come out of the content vault or new things to be added. And I don't know if in the time frame that we're in, going from Witch Queen to Lightfall, if that's going to happen, that we're going to have another season where Arc lives. We dominate everything going into Lightfall. We get new stuff, possibly a couple new strikes, some using the old stuff. Just in this scheme of things, I just don't know if the level of where our Guardians are right now, we're starting to get to the point where Grandmaster Nightfalls are becoming Vanguard playlists, and that's with the experience that people have, with the strategies, the oldness of the strikes, the familiarness of the strat. Like we run through these things. You know, speedrunners are doing some of them in 5 minutes, sometimes shorter. So when we're designing some of these activities, they have to keep in mind how much stronger our guardians have become, and to keep the challenge up, because you know we have raids, we have raids and GMs to truly test this, and when we're starting to just run through them just as hard as we are, you know, raids and things like that, like the end game is people are gonna start dropping off the game. People are gonna stop playing the content. Um, you know, a lot of people in my clan just didn't feel like it was worth it this season to do GMs, because, like I said, the rewards were not good enough, and it's the same. It's samey. You know, leveling to plus 15 to do the same strikes that we've done for forever. Um, so it's just something to keep in mind. And like I said, the one of my favorite activities in the game, I feel like, is in dire need of a facelift. Dire needed some retuning, just due to, in the last 2 seasons, how much crazier we have gotten in terms of skill and ability, and just it's kind of nuts. I'd love to hear people's comments about this topic in down below. Appreciate your time, and just like I said, love to hear your thoughts on this topic. See you on the next one.